the community court could actually do this, because if we push the United States to the territorial land that they can only govern themselves on, do it to the Articles of Confederation, U.S. Constitution, that they would be looked upon as a extremely manageable entity, because people would realize, like, oh my goodness, they are small. But we let them. See, Nebraska is 1.4% considered land that is governable by the United States written law. All the rest of the land is under common law. Nobody knows it.
Huh.
So we're supposed to push that written law onto that 1.4%. Connecticut is 0.4%. California is 34%. Nevada is 84%. We're supposed to push that federal government onto their own land and tell them to stay there and quit bothering the Americans. But
Wow.
they keep coming out. They keep coming out and touching the Americans, is because the Americans got Social Security numbers.
But they don't have a clue what's going on. So
They don't have a clue what's going on.
Now, Paul, you said you were working on a affidavit of sovereignty, like something that you're going to publish on your website that we could have access to.
Yeah. I sell it for just $5, because the reason I sell it for $5 is because the people that take this document and use it, they have perpetual access to this Dropbox that will tell of stories of people using it, of minor adjustments to it, successes and difficulties that they come across, in the operation of it. So for $5, that is like a wonderful deal.
Okay, so what you're really paying for is the wealth of experience and foreknowledge.
Yeah, the application of it, because every time you start using that document, you can get on this website and say, well, what are other people doing? What other obstacles? Are we getting good responses? Or is this a waste of time? We don't have to, each person doesn't have to just go in there guessing. They're going to have hundreds of examples of where people are using the same document or the same standing. It's just I'm not going to do it for less than $5, because I'm not going to take my time to set up the Dropbox and send it to them. And
right.
Oh yeah, that seems like a lot, like more than fair.
yeah, it should be $100, but anyway, I can make a living doing stuff like that. I get thousands of people. When I put good stuff together, it becomes popular, and I sell for $5 a pop usually. I can't sell for any less than that, because I got to take time to add those people to Dropbox.
Oh yeah.
Answer a couple emails, but anyway, that's what the church should be doing. The church should be doing what I'm doing. They should be establishing a sound resource for dealing with these guys. They don't. Most of them are 501c3s.
Absolutely. You just hit it on the head.
Sam was waiting for you to go there.
Yeah, they've abandoned. They've taken on an unholy alliance. They're holding hands with Satan. A lot of them even know it, and it's terrible. It's terrible.
Right.
Unbelievably terrible.
Paul, could you just quickly explain what the 501c3 status is for our listeners, in case they don't understand what that is or even have a clue?
501c3 status is very similar to taking a Social Security number. You've walked away from your sovereignty, and you walked into their office, and you say you want to do business with them. And they go, okay, we'll do business, but we're going to do business under our terms. And their terms are, state is going to govern this entity that you guys are going to create, and you're going to have a church name on it. It's not going to be a Church of Jesus Christ. You're not going to be allowed to use the Bible as the rule of law. You're going to be forced to use legislative standards to regulate that entity, just the same as they use to regulate a lot of other companies that they.
So Jesus is not the creator of this church. It is the state that is the creator of this church.
Yep. And when they have a meeting, Jesus is knocking on the door, wanting to get in, to put his input in, and they say, no thanks.
Yep.
No thanks. We don't need your help. We're doing just fine. It's satanic. It's terrible that these churches will take this ransom and this privileges benefit and sell out their countrymen.
Yeah, Dan has a pretty interesting story. Our friend is very involved in the church that we attend. We are not members of this church. It is a 501c3 church, but we're also searching out a house type of church right now, kind of in place of that. But Dan, go ahead, Dan.
Um, a quick background on me, Paul. I have gone to school for my bachelor's degree in pastoral ministry. I was a pastoral intern for 3 years at a church that was 501c3. I knew nothing about any of this until a little more than a year ago. So this has been a journey for Sam and I. We both came into the realization of all this stuff a year ago and learning all of this. So with that, as we had our friend told me about we have a food bank at our church, one that the people of the church stock, but also one that the government brings a mobile food truck around. And when we're opening the food bank up that our people stock only, we are allowed to share the gospel and talk with people. But if it's when the mobile food truck comes along, we the people line up in the church that it's basically packed out for getting their food. We are not allowed to speak of the gospel, mention Jesus Christ or the Bible at all, period. And when our friend learned this, he was telling us about it. He was outraged. She's like, well, then what's the point? Why are we doing this? And it just, that was one of the things that, and this is right when we're discovering 501c3 status, and Sam and I are going like, wow, oh my word, they really do control us.
Yep. And if they wanted to shut your doors, they could pass a law and do it. Completely regulated. They'll tell you, go somewhere else. This building's ours. You can back out of that 501c3 because you remember it's voluntary. It's a voluntary agreement. It's a contract. So they can back out of it, but they got to do it properly.
Right. I've watched some seminars on that from Robin Wright, this guy that used to be part of the Lordship Foundation, but I don't know much of where he's at this point either. But that's actually where I've taken a lot of my notes, was from him on that stuff. So
Yeah. Any church, even a satanic church, can be a 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
But the IRS recognizes a church under a true church that's going to stay independent of the United States system as a 508. The IRS will recognize a 508 church, and there's no registration, no nothing. It's declared as independent from the United States and the regulations of the IRS, and they can't even determine who is allowed to be a member of that 508 classification. They're not even allowed to make that determination. So that's a good deal.
We were talking about you sell for $5 the affidavit and all that. Can we just talk a little bit about documents and why we wouldn't want to use the court's documents and whatnot? I understand that there are laws of the document, and even more so there's like a debtor side to and a creditor side to certain documents and things.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. The number one thing is you got to decide if you want to use their courts or not. If you don't want to use their courts, then every word on there needs to be crucial to keep yourself independent from them. So when somebody comes after you and you don't want to use their courts, most people will fill out a court title as in, for example, our court would be called in the District Court of Douglas County. Okay, in. Okay, you don't want to put that word there, in, because that's a term.
Right.
Well, to.
To.
We put the word to. So
okay.
It's just a letterhead. You just convert it to a letterhead. To the District Court of Douglas County. And then you stay away from the word defendant. Never use the word defendant. You don't even have to put nothing under it. You don't have to title yourself. You don't have to ever title yourself. Just don't use the word defendant. Because defendant in the statutory world is a U.S. citizen.
Right.
And then don't ever use a resident address. You can if you're in court and they ask you, is that a zip code that you put on that paper? You say, not that I'm aware of. even if 1,000 people told you that's a zip code, you just say, not that I'm aware of. Then they'll say, well, what is that? Well, that's a series of letters and numbers that the guy in the blue suit that brings my mail tells me to put on my paper if I want it to show up in that box in front of my house.
Right.
But anyway, if you do call it a zip code, and here's a true case that I've read. The judge said, You did not rebut the zip code that you use on all of the filings of your documents in relationship to a federal zone. Therefore, I rule against you. The judge used the zip code on the guy's filing to give territorial jurisdiction. See, that zip code's associated with a federal zone, and you're saying by using that zip code, the judge, somebody will say, do you live at that address? Yeah, I do. You just told the judge that you're a resident of the United States. That's what's before the judge. So I always put everything I want on that letter, and then at the last sentence I say, not a resident address without the United States. I usually just put without the United States.
Huh.
Just without the United States. Or you can write down not a resident address. It's when you tell them in court that you're a resident in a federal area, a federal zone. That's when they hook you.
Right, exactly. I had that written down here in my notes to ask you, and you just totally covered it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Territorial jurisdiction. It's territorial jurisdiction. If they got territorial jurisdiction, it doesn't make if you're an American or not. You did something within their zone.
Right.
You threw a gum wrapper on the floor in their territory. You're subject to their laws.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad. Too bad. You're the one that came into our zone. You're the one that did it. Don't cry now that you don't want to be held to our law. Then you'll say, well, I didn't know. Well, our law says you know. Ignorance of the law is not going to be excused here. Our laws are written. They're written in the 50 million words that these books on these shelves that nobody can read.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. They don't care about justice. They use the law against you. It's evil, but they do that.
Well, their system is it's all a monetary system, right? I mean, it's all commercial crime or it's commerce, right?
No, there's a lot of commerce involved in it, but a lot of it is control.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of good things with their system. There's a lot of good things in it, but of course we got 50 million dead babies. That's part of the bad part of it.
So, okay, so I think you said you own a business and you deal with like property and stuff, right?
Yeah, I have rental properties. Now the cities come against me, and they've cost me over $1 million just in my rental property side. I probably lost almost $3 million dealing with this legal stuff. So I am not a small fish. For example, in 2000, the IRS said I owed $150,000. I simply sent in a 6203 assessment request. They've never touched me since. Never bothered me since.
Wow.
Remember I told you to keep the burden of proof on them?
Right. Okay. Yep.
That's what a 6203 does. A fool assesses himself, especially an American. When an American assesses himself, he writes his Social Security number on the paper, and then he signs it.
Wow.
That's all they need. They look at that number, and they look at the name. If you just signed it and didn't put a Social Security number on it, they can't even take enough money from you. You have to put that Social Security number on it.
Wow.
All right.
See, that 1040, for example, tax form, that's a contract. We've had IRS agents in the witness stand. You know, this is what the IRS agent said. Mr. IRS agent, what created the liability on the defendant? He assessed himself by signing a 1040 tax form with a Social Security number on it. Well, Mr. IRS agent, if he didn't put a Social Security number on it or sign it, would he have a duty with the IRS? The IRS agent goes, no, none.
Okay, so then you don't want to use the Social Security card like at all. I watched an informational video once. I don't remember who it was by. I think it might have been Kent Hovind or David-Sidney, talking about how like you can redeem the Social Security number or
you don't have to redeem it. Social Security number is no different than a driver's license in your pocket. Remember I told you a story? The guy had it in his pocket and it didn't give him no problems.
Yep.
When he pulled it out and showed it, that's when it gave him a problem.
Okay, so then
you can have a Social Security number. It doesn't give you problems, but when you use it, then you got problems.
Okay, so you don't want to use it at all, like ever, just period.
Well, if somebody used it to open a bank account, I don't think the government's going to ever use that against you to produce evidence of personal jurisdiction, because they don't want anybody to know that. They don't want people to know that. they'll let you walk before that comes into the courtroom.
Right. Gotcha.
Let's say you made $1 million a year, $100 million a year.